That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Practical AI Integration, How to Get Started, a 3-part pulse check series from Enrollify. I'm Brian Piper, the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. In this series, we'll explore how to get started integrating AI into your institutional workflows in practical, responsible, and ethical ways. Now let's get to today's episode. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest challenges in higher ed AI adoption: how to move from scattered individual experimentation to strategic institutional implementation. What I've noticed working within different various institutions is that technology is rarely the limiting factor. It's how we approach the human and organizational elements of change that create the biggest barriers to adoption. By the end of this episode, you'll have a practical roadmap for piloting and scaling AI at your institution, regardless of your current stage of AI maturity. The single biggest mistake that institutions make is treating AI as a technology project rather than a change management initiative. Traditional project management approaches will fail with AI because AI doesn't just change how we do things. It changes what we do. It changes who does it and how we think about our work. When we frame AI implementation as change management, we focus on people first, process second, and technology third. First thing you really have to do is build an AI governance structure. So creating an AI council, AI committees, those sorts of things, because those give people the understanding that it's okay to use these tools. It gives them the opportunity to experiment and gives them guidelines as far as what they can and can't do. And when you're forming a group like this, you want to make sure that you have that cross-functional representation. So you want IT, you want academic affairs, student affairs, enrollment, admissions, marketing, legal. All of those different groups need to be involved. And then you need executive sponsorship is an essential part of this. You need leadership to recognize that this is an important initiative. Then you need to set up regular meetings and you need to make sure who has decision-making authority around creating an AI strategy, getting that approved, and making sure that the guidelines are being adopted and adhered to. And that's really the next step, is developing these AI guidelines and policies. So we recommend that you start with guidelines or principles rather than policies or rigid rules. It's easier to change those. The technology is changing so quickly. You really want to be adaptable and flexible with these. And you want to make sure that you are balancing innovation with risk management. You want to encourage people to experiment and play with these tools and know that they will fail at certain things with these tools, but that's okay. But you also want to make sure that they're not putting in private data or personal information into these tools, especially into these public models, these foundation models, even the paid versions. Unless you have an agreement with them or you know specifically where your data is going, where it's being stored, how it's being used, you have to be really careful what data you put into these systems. And then you want to create those guardrails, clear but flexible guardrails, right? You want to keep your existing policies in focus, and you want to make sure that everyone knows that those policies still apply to technology, whether it's AI or any other tools. You're not going to put sensitive information up on social media about your institution. You can't put that into these AI tools as well. So think about starting with a simple charter for your AI council that defines the scope, the goals, and the membership and the authority of the council. And then from there, once you have the council, once you have the guidelines, then you want to kind of understand the organizational readiness. So you want to understand the cultural readiness. You want to know if there's an appetite for change, if people are ready for innovation, if they've had a lot of change recently, if maybe there's some change fatigue, some resistance there. You want to know where you are on that kind of adoption roadmap. Look back at historical technology adoption and how those projects have gone. Where are the barriers? What are the things that made them successful or made them not successful? You want to make sure you have leadership support. Any sort of change management project hinges on having leadership support. And then you also want to make sure that you're technically ready for integration. You want to make sure that your data is secure and set up, that your tech stack is ready for some AI integration, some automation. You want to look at your data quality, governance, infrastructure capabilities. Do you have resources to help support this, or do you have to bring in sort of third party resources? Looking at technical skills, do you have people on your team that can work with APIs, that can connect different systems? And then you want to do a process readiness assessment. So look at the workflows you have, document those workflows, create those standard operating procedures. Not only is it good practice institutionally, but it's critical when you start integrating AI and you start looking for areas where you can automate. You want to make sure that your processes and your workflows are documented. You wanna have a clear understanding of the pain points. Where are the barriers? Where are the big time sucks within your workflows? What would be ideal places to start optimizing, to start figuring out ways to automate? And then you wanna make sure that you have measurement systems in place, that you're ready to track the improvement, the ROI from integrating these different tools and technologies into your system. So you can start all of this just with a simple like self-assessment survey that different departments can use to evaluate their readiness for AI adoption. And so then you want to start thinking about the strategic alignment and the use case identification. How do you figure out what your pilot project should be? And that really starts with, aligning with your institutional priorities. So map your AI initiatives to your strategic plan goals. Focus on institutional challenges that you're facing and opportunities that you have available. And then you want to connect to resource allocation decisions. So you want to make sure that as you're planning your budget for next year, as you're planning your hiring and headcount for next year, that you're thinking about how AI is going to impact your decisions, your workflows, and your processes. And then you really want to start looking at identifying those high impact use cases. Those are where you're going to find those pilot projects, those sweet spots. You really want to start off with a bunch of wins. You want to start off with whatever is going to have the biggest impact, but you want to balance impact with complexity. So you don't want to take on a task that's super complex, that has a ton of moving parts. Take something that's simple, but highly impactful, and then prioritize clear and measurable outcomes. So are you just looking to increase the time that it takes you to do a particular task or to create a workflow, or are you looking to increase your effectiveness of your marketing campaigns or of your enrollment campaigns? And then consider the visibility and momentum building potential of the different use cases. If it's a high visibility use case, then that might be better incentive to scale more quickly once they see that this really works, this really saves time. Workshops are great ways to do this. Looking at pain point analysis, time and resource consumption. You can do audits on that to see where most of your time is going. Process complexity. So, you can do all of this just by creating a simple like 2 by 2 grid that maps potential AI use cases by impact and implementation difficulty. So then you want to kind of figure out where the sweet spot is so that you have ones that are fairly easy to implement, but are going to have a high return. And so then when you're scoping projects, criteria for good projects, they have a bounded scope, right? So they have a set series of processes or tasks that those workflows encompass. So they don't change dramatically from project to project. It's a fairly consistent step. And then you have clear success metrics. So you can very easily track what success is going to look like. And these are, SMART goals. Those are very easily defined metrics and analytics that you can see an impact on those changing and improving. You want to make sure that you have a moderate or a low risk level. So you don't want to start off with a high risk data. You don't want to start off with, something that's going to have a huge impact on the success of your institution. Start off with something that's moderate or low risk. And then ideally get something that stakeholders are enthusiastic about, that creates visibility within your institution. And so then when you're scoping the process, be very clear to define the specific problem statement that you're trying to address. And then you want to identify different success measures. What is success going to look like if we fix this problem? And then you want to set your timeline and the resources that are going to be needed to accomplish this pilot project. So you know that people already are busy, they're overtaxed, don't have the resources, don't have the budget that we need on so many things. So you want to make sure that what you're asking people to do, it's going to be hard. The beginning of the project is always difficult. You're changing people's workflows, you're changing their typical styles of getting a process done. But once you get that evolved and once you get them into that different mindset, it becomes easier and easier for them to keep moving along that path. So you want to be sure that you establish clear roles and responsibilities, and then that you communicate that plan to everyone that's going to be involved and the rest of the team. So problems that a lot of pilot projects face is people start off too broad or too ambitious. Keep it small, keep it simple, especially when you're first getting started. Better to roll out a small pilot project, have it not work out exactly right, and then figure out, how to actually run those and step into a bigger, more ambitious project then. Not having enough resources is another challenge, another reason that a lot of pilot projects fail. You have to get everybody on board. You have to get the team working together. You have to have them understand that this is going to be hard at first. It's going to be change. It's going to be difficult. But once they get going, it's going to save them a lot more time. You want to make sure that you have clear ownership. Who is in charge? Who is running this? Who is responsible for this? And then poor stakeholder engagement. You're going to need stakeholders involved. You're going to need them for budget to, test out different tools. You're going to need them to recognize that things are going to slow down a little bit while you're trying to speed up. So a great way to start is by documenting 3 or 4 potential pilot projects using just like a one-page template that captures the problem, the approach, metrics, timeline, and the team involved. And then the next step is really building that team. You want a cross-functional team. So you have to look at the roles within the different workflows. You have to figure out who needs to be involved. You need to get an executive sponsor so that someone is responsible for this. Someone is on board for saying, yes, this is a priority. This is an initiative we need to work towards. Ideally, you want to have a project champion, someone who's an AI enthusiast, who is forward thinking about this, who can run with this. You need subject matter experts. You will probably need technology support. A lot of times these foundation tools, these foundation models are great places to get started. You don't need a lot of technology for those. But once you're starting to look for, getting some paid versions of these tools or looking for some on-premises development, you're definitely going to need technology support for that. Someone to lead the change management project, and then all the end users that are going to be involved in this and in doing the actual work and integrating with the tools. Some team dynamics that you want to consider. You want to make sure you have a balance between AI enthusiasts and skeptics, because you need both of those viewpoints within any pilot project, within any ability to scale. You want to make sure you have people who are asking hard questions, and you want to make sure you have people who are looking to move forward. And then you also need a mix of technical and process expertise. You need people who understand the technology. You need people who understand the workflow, and there can be crossover there as well. And then you need good communication. You have to set up regular meetings. You have to have updates. You have to make sure that people understand what's happening, what they should be doing, what their responsibilities are. And you can start this off just with very clear role descriptions for AI project team members that really emphasizes the technical and the change management responsibilities of a project like this. And so once you have the project selected, you have the team selected, then you have to start looking at tools. So many AI tools out there. It's hard to know where to start. We usually recommend people just start with these foundation models, right? Start with ChatGPT. It can do a lot of different things. But once you start diving deeper into different pilot projects, you want to make sure that you align the tool with the use case. You want to make sure that the tool will integrate into, whatever environment or framework you need it to integrate into to help make the workflow smoother. And then you're going to need to provide support and training for the tool. So look at what sort of availability there is. Is the customer support from the company quick and responsive, or is it non-existent? Do they have training? Obviously, you're going to look at the cost and the ROI potential. You have to balance those. You can't invest a whole lot of money up front if it looks like it's going to be a small return in time savings. You need to look at security and compliance. So different vendors handle security different. They should all have in their terms and condition how they are leveraging your data, how they're storing it, how they're tracking it, how they're saving it or getting rid of it. And then you want to think about like different vendors or partners that you might be able to join with so that you can provide better experiences. Transparency is key in all of this. So you want to be transparent about the opportunities you are creating. You want to be transparent about the impact this might have on the tasks that people do in their jobs. People need to have willingness to co-create solutions within the tools, within their team. And you need to have a solid understanding of data handling practices, what you can do with the data, what you need to do to make sure the data is clean and ready for these systems. So, anytime you're looking at tools, it's a good idea to develop this standard set of questions that you can ask potential vendors or that you can find out about specific tools before you start implementing them. And then once you're ready to implement, once you've got your tools, your pilot projects, your team, now you really need to think about ethics. So ethics are a foundational element of any AI adoption process because these tools can do a lot of things, but it's up to us to decide what they should do. I'm not going to automate a task that I enjoy doing because that's part of the work that I like. You can automate tasks that you don't like doing. We need to move past just, ROI to really value based decision making. So don't just look at the potential time savings, look at what that particular task within the workflow, what value does that add to the project? Do we need human expertise in there to be able to add that value, or is that something that we can automate? Key ethical considerations to keep in mind as you're doing these projects: look at the privacy and data protection, look at fairness and bias within the tools, figure out ways to mitigate those. Transparency and explainability. You want to make sure that people understand what is happening, why it's happening, and why we're choosing to automate these particular tasks. And then critical to establish areas in the workflow for human oversight and human agency. We are the experts. We understand the goals, we understand our audiences, we understand the needs of these projects better than any of these tools can do. You still need humans to come in and validate the accuracy, to be aware of the risks and to mitigate those. And then, make sure that the educational values, you want to align those with adoption. So if you have new people that are coming into your team or junior level people within your department who need certain experience to be able to get to that level of expertise where they can become the subject matter experts, you don't want to take those tasks off of their plate and automate those tasks because they're never going to be able to make that jump to the next step. So at least train them in the process. It's like using a calculator and suddenly now you can't do basic math anymore. You still have to learn the fundamentals. You still have to learn the foundational elements. Then you can go back and start using the tools to automate or speed those processes up. And then, for practical ethical approaches, come up with an ethics review process for AI initiatives. So do regular auditing and monitoring. Make sure that when you're auditing output, you're not just looking for accuracy and quality, you're also looking for bias and you're looking for other data issues that might be available. You want to make sure that you have clear accountability structures. Who's responsible for that final check? Who is responsible before that content, that AI assisted content goes out into the world? Get stakeholder input. Make sure stakeholders understand the process. They understand, everything that's going on within the pilot projects. So you can create a fairly straightforward, simple ethics checklist for AI initiatives that kind of prompts teams along the way to consider those key ethical dimensions. And then you're going to start integrating. You're going to start using the tools, and you need to be sure that when you're doing that, you're measuring the impact and success of those tools. So you've already got your metrics established that you're going to track. You know what's going to be improvement, what's going to show success for this pilot project. And then you want to process those efficiencies that are gained, like time saved, quality improvement, user satisfaction, cost reductions, different ways to measure all of those. You want to make sure that you establish a baseline before you implement. So measure how much time it takes you to create to do a workflow first before you integrate AI. And then have regular check-ins during, especially at the beginning of that pilot project, because people are going to have resistance to using the tools. It's going to be different from their normal workflow. But once you get that process in place, once you get them some time using the tools and getting used to that, it's going to be easier then to start measuring the actual results and the improvements. You want to make sure you have like an after action summary, formal evaluations after you complete the project so that you can look at, what the short term impact is on time, on effectiveness of whatever work you're doing. But then you also want to be looking at the long term impact, and you need to be tracking that. So you start off tracking for short term impact, and then you continue to track so you can really see over time what the long-term improvement of that is. And when you're doing the tracking, try to balance the qualitative and quantitative metrics. So you're going to need hard metrics, right? So time saved, money saved, resources, but you also want those soft metrics, right? What is the experience like for the users? What is satisfaction like for the audience? What does engagement look like from the content? And you can do this just by creating a pre and a post measurement template or survey that captures qualitative and quantitative impacts of the project. Keep a list of these lessons learned, successes and failures are both should be equally valued. We learn as much from when we fail as we do from when we succeed, maybe more. Cross-institutional sharing, create opportunities for people to share their wins, to share their losses, create these regular showcases, these AI hangouts that you can do where people are just exchanging ideas. Communities of practice are great places to bring in your AI enthusiasts and have them showcase new tools, new solutions, new use cases. And it gets everybody kind of thinking about different ways we can use these tools. There are some groups that are even doing internal newsletters or blogs where they're just consistently sharing information, trying to get that out there to everybody because education and awareness are some of the most critical things for any successful AI integration. So, a quick win is to just start scheduling monthly AI showcases or AI hangouts where you can talk about projects, you can share progress, you can share lessons learned, new technologies, all those sorts of things, and just start getting those conversations going. And then once you've got your pilot projects like kind of in place, then you want to start looking at scaling. Look for ways to harness the positive user feedback that you've gotten. Look to document the processes and the learnings that you've got. Create support resources and make those available to everyone. You can scale by, starting with a particular domain and doing a workflow within that domain and then looking for where that workflow is used across different domains. There is similar work done across admissions, advising, facilities that, once you get a process set up in one place, you can move that out to all the different groups. You can also scale by function. So customer service or data analysis or administrative assistants. All those are different functions who do very similar roles across all sorts of different groups, or even by user group. So staff, faculty, students. What are the different use cases from those different teams that you can bring together and showcase out? And then you really need to be thinking about, how you're constantly adjusting your governance and how you're looking back at the conventions that you have set up so that as you scale, you're continuing to be flexible. You want to make sure that you're looking at your pilot projects to understand why they were successful and when they're ready for larger scaling and adoption. And you are going to find resistance. You are really building a culture of AI understanding in your organization. A lot of the resistance comes from fear of job displacement, right? People don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to be replaced. Past negative experiences, either with AI or with other technologies, ethical concerns, workloads, right? We all have a lot on our plates right now, worried about the learning curve, worried about how we're going to fit all this in. So really focus on these tools augmenting, not replacing jobs, right? Showcase real examples of time saved. That's where all of that information that you get from your pilot projects is critical to being able to scale. And then create these safe spaces for experimentation. Celebrate your early adopters and successes. Look for opportunities for continuous learning, for recognizing people who are winning. Lots of different ways to scale, to broaden your reach across your institution, and to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page. So, just remember, AI implementation is as much about people and process as it is about technology. Start with the governance and strategic alignment, and then start moving into implementation. The most important first step is to get the right people and align them on the why of AI integration before getting into the how. As always, reach out and let me know how you're using AI in your personal and professional life. Blue skies, and keep creating.
This Pulse Check mini-series has been brought to you by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.